Now comes the really scary time of drilling my first hole in my car. So I've thought about it. There's nothing much I can do about it. I just have to do it. So this is where it comes down to. When I drilled this hole in the test block with the 29/64 drill bit, the way that it bit and grabbed and stopped and then pulled into the block got me thinking, and I really don't want that to happen on the bodywork. It's too much of a chance of potential disaster. So I got my drill gauge out, and 7/16 is the next standard fractional size, smaller than 29/64. And I have a step bit, Christmas tree bit, unibit, whatever you want to call them, that goes up to an increment of 7/16. The next step is larger than the prescribed amount. So I put some tape on this, so I stop and it'll be a 7/16 hole. My line of thought on this is, because it's fiberglass, it may not cut perfectly clean. So I'm probably going to have a little overage or slop in the hole. And I like the step bit because it gives you a little more control. You can push, and it'll cut, and it's not going to grab or chunk out like a large 2-flute drill bit will. So we're going to do another test hole in the aluminum block and see if my theory holds true. So let's get going. What I am going to do is I am going to use the Christmas tree bit, and I rethought about the 29/64 drill, and because the 7/16 is just such a little bit smaller, what I did is I have this tapered reamer, and I slid my drill gauge, the 29/64 hole, onto the reamer, made a tape wrap at the 29/64 where it stopped, and then I'm going to use this reamer to finish out the rest of that hole. I just don't want to take a chance on that big bit grabbing and chunking out. So rechecked the template. The large hole goes to the inside, small hole to the outside. So here we go. I'm taking a drill bit to my car. I'm going to use a small bit first and make a little pilot hole. Just a little divot. So the Christmas tree bit doesn't skate. And in the instructions, they want the drill bit to be 90 degrees or perpendicular to the floor, and we don't want to be this way, that way. So we're just going to have to do this as best as we can, and here goes everything. It is cutting very quickly through the fiberglass, so be aware. It took basically no down pressure to get it to cut. And now I'm going to use this hand reamer. And peel back my tape a little bit so I can accurately see my progress. And the tape seems to be working out just fine. I ream down to where the tape line just touches. And I have a really clean hole with very little chipping around the edge. That makes me really happy. Okay, now I am going to use the countersink, but I am going to twirl it by hand. It has a tendency to chatter, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to turn this by hand. A little bit of feel goes a long way here. When it starts to cut smoothly all the way around the circle, just a little bit of down pressure. And there we have it. And now, scary part of the job, scary part 2. Also, that chamfer will help eliminate the tap from grabbing and chunking out or chipping off your top paint. And this takes no effort. It's cutting threads in the fiberglass very easily. And we are down cutting full threads. Back this out. Little upward pressure as you turn. And we have cut our threaded hole with no damage to the body or the paintwork. You go slow and careful, and I don't think you'll have a problem. One of the things with these ferrules is it's a blind hole for the 3/8 inch diameter, but the last 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch of it has been drilled and tapped with a 1/4 20 thread. And that comes into play when you're working on the door units, the door ferrules a little bit later on. But I'm trying to figure out a way, well, how do I thread this in and tighten it or get it snug and then run the big nut on from underneath? I'm like, well, why don't I use that 1/4 20 thread? So what I did is I've got a 3-inch long 1/4 20 bolt that the threads bottom out on. So what I'm going to do is thread that in until it bottoms. Use that to turn the ferrule into the body to where it's nearly snug, or just nice and snug. And then I can hold it in place while I thread the big nut on underneath. Sorry if my hands are in the way, but The nut has bottomed out underneath. Got a standard 3/4 inch combination wrench. And I am able to get on the flats of the nut, get about an 1/8 turn or 1/16 of a turn. And again, I'm being very careful. Some feel on the wrench. Okay, and that is snug. Spin my bolt out, and I've successfully installed my first hole in the car. Now I have to have lightning strike about 25, 30 more places between all the lift the dot studs and the holes in the doors. So, scary first hole over and done. Okay, next step in the instructions is to drill and install the lift-a-dot fasteners that are just off of these main ferrules. Instructions say to use a 5/32 drill bit, slide it through, and then attach the nut in from underneath. The ingrained machinist in me, I'm going to drill them 1/8 inch and tap them for the 832 thread, and then run the nut on from underneath. That's just my choice. You can do it as recommended. I'm going to do drill and tap. So do the same thing as before. Get our drill bit on the mark by hand. Give it a little twirl. Now I am going to assume that these do not want to be perpendicular or parallel to the floor. I think they need to be following the angle or the contour of the body. So this is going to be tilted a little sideways. This is exaggerated. A little this way and a little that way. So it winds up parallel to that surface. And I have an 832 tap, which again, follow the same angle as you did drilling. Get it started. A little upward pressure while you're backing the tap out. And we have no chipping or chunking. I'm just going to give this the lightest little twirl with the countersink to break that edge. And then here is a tip or a trick that I have learned over years and with experience. The supplied nuts for the lift the dots are nylock style or self-locking. And in tight quarters like this, they can be really difficult to turn, and on small studs like this. So when I have limited access, I will pre-thread the nut onto the stud and get the threads cut into the nylon insert. They just go together and go on a little easier. And then put the flat washer on the stud. Spin that down into the body. Try to get your finger up and in there to get the nut on. This could be interesting. Well, this is not working out either. Well, I think the solution to this is to use an open-end small wrench and have to snug these down about 1/16 of a turn at a time. Between the angle of the body and the angle of the rear bulkhead, you just can't get a socket on them to turn it effectively. So I will just be doing this for a while. Okay, I'm just going to maintain tension on the top while I snug up the bottom. Again, here, feel is very important because you have the drag of the nylock nut, but you also don't want to misinterpret that as tightness. So again, snug and done. This one is a little tough because the edge of the bolt seal for the bulkhead is right next to where the hole goes through. So if I measure it gets stuck on the edge of the bolt seal, it won't come off. So it's something a little difficult. Almost there. Just right there. There we go. Okay. Success. Page 6 on the installation instructions is where you start to lay out the lift the dot studs along the back of the cockpit cowling in front of the trunk lid. And they tell you to measure 2 7/8 inch forward from the trunk opening, centered between the trunk hinges. These instructions must be for the older cars where they had the external trunk hinges. So you will have to make your own determination on where the center of your trunk lid is, or in my case, I have stripes, so my center lift the dot stud is going to be dead smack between my stripes. I have a scale here. I'm going to lay it down right where the trunk lid breaks. And I'm going to mark 2 7/8. I'm going to step ahead a little bit because they want you to install the next 2, which are spaced 7 inches either side of these. So I'm going to make my marks out here at 2 7/8. Connect my lines. Now I need to measure center between my brake and the stripes. And they are, it is exactly 1 inch. That is the point for my rear center lift the dot. Now 7 inches over on my car falls right here. And here. Now to just check symmetry, it's just shy of 9/16 from the main stripe. Just shy of 9/16 from the main stripe. Here's where you may want to consider fudging those hard numbers, those hard measurement numbers, and for cosmetic appeal, what would look best, visually, and moving this stud to between my stripe, my accent stripe and the main stripe, I don't think that would look good, or on this little stripe. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about this for a little bit. Now I went and I grabbed just a couple of the retaining nuts from the parts kit, and just to help me visualize what having some shiny or some chrome things on the body of the car. That's at the recommended spacing or layout. This would be between the main stripe and the accent stripe. On the accent stripe. And back to recommended 7-inch spacing. Well, I think in my instance, I am going to follow the recommended spacing, 7 inches off center. To me, visually, I like that look. This is where you can kind of tailor things to your own taste, make your own decision, make your own determination. But I think I'm going to go with the recommended spacing. Okay, I've got my material set up. We're going to do the same thing as we did on the ferrules in the first lift the dots. So I'm going to start a little pilot hole, or lack of a better term, a little center punch, so my drill bit doesn't skate. Just using a little down pressure. And then these holes, you want to try to maintain being perpendicular to the surface. This has a little bit of a slope, so you will be square to the body and perpendicular to the surface. And just light, easy pressure, and be aware when your drill is going to break through. Again, I'm going to take the countersink, just gently twirl it, break that sharp edge, minimize my potential for chipping. And as before, I'm choosing to tap these holes to fit the threads for the studs. I'm not using any kind of a lubricant or anything on the tap. It cuts very easily through the fiberglass. Give it another little twirl with the countersink. Tap may have raised that edge a little bit. Side benefit to my cup holder installation is I didn't return some of the rejected cup holders, so now they've become pretty handy little parts containers. So I am going to put on the flat washer. And thread these in. And just snug and a little tweak. Now we go to the inside. We're inside the trunk. I masked off my trunk light with some tape here because it was blinding the camera. I hope you can see this well. One addition I am going to make from what is in the instructions is I am going to use a pretty large fender washer under the bodywork on this stud. The idea behind that is to spread that clamping load out and across the widest area possible. I don't know how much tension or torque is going to be on these studs, but I don't think it's going to hurt. So and I have a wrench on the bodywork on the outside holding the stud so it doesn't twist while this nylock nut runs down. There, it's snugged up. I'm just using finger pressure. Now to do the other two. I think that's all I'm gonna stress myself with today. I think I'm gonna have an adult beverage. Thanks for watching.